A lot of so-called film lovers online are claiming that Hollywood is running out of ideas. And let's look at what happened here in the theaters. Inside Out 2, a sequel, has recently passed up another sequel, Dune Part 2, in being the highest grossing movie of 2024. I did not feel like seeing Inside Out 2. Instead, I wanted to see a movie called Thelma. Here we have a movie that acknowledges the idea that elderly people are actually human beings. Hello, you are watching Alien Cowboy Cinema, where I wear a French beret to review movies, even though I am Romanian. Please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. The lead actress is 93-year-old June Squibb, who also happens to play a voiceover character in the movie Inside Out 2 as well. Shaft and the guy from Clockwork Orange turn in brilliant performances to this movie too. Let's get into the plot. First, a personal story. About 10 to 15 years ago, my maternal grandmother received a phone call from someone claiming to be me, one of her many grandchildren, saying that I was in jail and that I needed money. She panicked, she called one of my uncles. The uncle said, "He's a good kid, just send the money, we'll take care of it later." You know, something like that. Obviously, this was a scam. I was not in jail. Or maybe it's not so obvious to some, I don't know. Now, Thelma is based on a true story. It is a story that is all too familiar to probably a significant amount of people by this time. So, the character, 93-year-old Thelma, she gets duped over the phone into sending $10,000 cash to some scammer. And now she wants her money back after finding out she's been scammed. Adventure ensues. The plot of Thelma is based on a true story which happened to the grandmother of Josh Margolin, the writer and director of Thelma. And I have to say, this is a great film debut for this young man. We don't see a lot of movies centered on elderly people as the main character very often. There have been movies like this in the past, but it's not like Hollywood is cranking these kind of movies out as quickly as they are with Marvel movies, for example, or Marvel TV shows. One cult classic movie I enjoyed very much that dealt with elderly living, I would have to say, is called Bubba Hotep. Now, Bubba Hotep is a very slow-moving movie. I think it was inspired by the idea that things are going to move very slowly in an old folks home somewhere in Texas is where I think it took place. Another movie that I saw was called Up, which of course is a very famous Pixar movie. That is another movie that, crushes your heart in the first 5 minutes, and then the old man goes on an adventure. Gran Torino would be, of course, a Clint Eastwood directed movie that also stars Clint Eastwood as a character that is maybe not so much the greatest human being on planet Earth. He's a little bit prejudiced, a little bit racist. Then of course he was also in another movie called The Mule, where you have a very elderly person who is running drugs for the cartels. I guess I will put here some more movies that deal with elderly characters. Most of these movies are films that I have not seen yet, but now I'm very curious to see. The script and cinematography in Thelma is very brilliant in my opinion. When I came into the movie, I of course was expecting a lot of jokes about getting older or narratives about getting older, and most of the jokes landed, and in a way it did not feel to me very much exploitative as it did feel relatable. For anyone who thinks of growing older, of having the privilege or the curse of growing older, right? So I managed to laugh, I was moved, almost nearly to tears sometimes. This movie really is a breath of fresh air compared to most of the stuff that's going to come out this year. Now, the grandson of Thelma is Daniel, and Daniel is played by, I believe his name is pronounced Fred Hershinger? Might be a German name. But I know I saw this gentleman, this young man, in The Pale Blue Eye, which ultimately was a disappointing movie, but there was a lot of great acting performances in it, good cinematography. It just was a bit of a letdown when you have Christian Bale as the lead in this movie, which he did a great job in that film. It's just the the execution, I can't remember what my problem with it was. One problem that I do remember that I have with it is that I don't want to ever watch it again. So, but anyway, Mr. Fred turns in a brilliant performance here of, it seems like he's ultimately playing a millennial grandson who feels very incompetent at everything in life. And isn't that the millennial battle cry? I always want to die sometimes. Parker Posey and Clark Gregg play the parents of Daniel, and they do a brilliant job of playing, you know, middle-aged parents who are very concerned for their son and very concerned for one of their matriarchs. I would have seen Parker Posey a long time ago in a movie called Coneheads from the 90s when I was a child. Clark Gregg, I am only familiar with him in being that, you know, secret agent type guy from all the Marvel movies and TV shows. He did a great job of being a character in this movie. You know, it's not like I saw that Marvel guy in the movie. He just seemed like, you know, a middle-aged father. So, if you're not distracting me, you're doing a good job. I am giving Thelma 4 out of 5 UFOs, meaning it is a great movie. Why is it a great movie? It's because the plot idea is much more fresh compared to a lot of things that are going to be coming out for the next 5 years, in my opinion. I have not seen a lot of movies like this, and a lot of movies like this are just simply not going to be made. 2, the music was great, the acting was great, the script was great, the cinematography was great. Thankfully, it did not move as slow as the film Bubba Hotep did. It was not too long of a movie, it was not too short of a movie, it was just right, like Goldilocks. Which, for all 3 of you who saw my Fall Guy movie review last week, I forgot to mention about Fall Guy. That movie was maybe 30 minutes too long, which prevented me from rating it a little higher. I just thought, oh my gosh, here we go. So I thought it was ending and wrapping up and I was kind of ready to go, and then they just went overboard with all these stunts and action and everything else, and while it was a pleasure to see, it just felt like overkill, which is funny because some movies that are much longer, like 3 hours, 3.5 hours, sometimes those movies leave me wanting more. I'm curious to know what the budget for this movie was. Can Josh Margolin pull off another movie like this that ultimately does not require a big budget, but you tell me a story that is captivating enough that makes me want another story from you? So as it stands, I'm going to say I enjoyed Thelma more than I enjoyed The Fall Guy last week. I was even trying to debate, did I like Thelma more than Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes? I arrived at the conclusion thinking, no, maybe not. But Thelma's either number 2 or 3 now for top movies of 2024 that I've seen. Dune Part 2 remains at the top. Have you watched Thelma yet? Are you going to see it in theaters? Let me know in the comments below. What kind of movies are you looking forward to? Come on, let's chop it up, huh?